One, to hell with you trying to get to work, says the left. You're standing on stolen ground. California is actually Mexico. Riots move from Los Angeles to Dallas to New York to Austin. And it's all before Saturday. Big protest. No kings. 2, the United States embarrassed by Switzerland right before the kickoff of the Gold Cup. Will U.S. men's soccer ever arrive on the world stage? With Alexi, Lalas, and Carli, Lloyd. 3, Terry Moran fired from ABC. With award-winning reporter at Racket.News, Matt Taibbi. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, come join the hundreds of thousands with us here at Fox News Facebook and the ever-increasing tens of thousands joining us at Fox News YouTube. Set a reminder that way every Monday through Thursday you're here to hang out and be a member of the Willisha. If you're listening on terrestrial radio, where we continue to set ratings records as well in several markets across this great United States of America, you don't ever have to miss the Will Cain Show. You simply subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. We got Two Days Dan. We've got Tinfoil Pat. And we've got a brand new show for you on this Wednesday. How we doing, fellas?
Doing good. Doing good.
Just living the dream.
I'm excited for Alexi and Carli to come in studio.
Not a lot of people out there, I understand, always dying to hear about soccer. Always with the caveat, I love soccer. I spend a good, 4 days of my week on the sidelines of a soccer field talking about the different qualities of this 13-year-old versus that 14-year-old, but from time to time also diving into what is wrong with American soccer. You know, the truth is, American soccer is big. It's always been the butt of jokes of traditional sports fans, but as a youth sport, it just grows and grows and grows. The New York, New Jersey area, massive when it comes to youth soccer.
Huge.
California and Dallas, Texas, huge when it comes to youth soccer. The question is, as we continue to churn out players, and I don't believe these players are without talent, how does it not manifest into something that can do something other than get embarrassed by Switzerland last night 4-0?
Most peaceful
right
country.
before the Gold Cup. Got to be able to beat Switzerland. Always neutral, except apparently when they play the United States in soccer. We're going to break that down with Carli, Lloyd, and Alexi Lalas. I'm excited to have Matt Taibbi back a little bit later here on the Will Cain Show. We've got a lot to talk to Matt about, including some of the insane rhetoric, policy positions, posturing, and grandstanding coming from those like, Eric Swalwell, Adam Kinzinger, Gavin Newsom. All that coming up a little bit later here on the Will Cain Show. But let's get started with story number 1. What starts in L.A. has moved to New York City, to Dallas, to Austin, to San Francisco, to a host, dozens, in fact, cities across the United States. It only seems to be a precursor for this coming Saturday. No Kings protest across this country. It all seems a bit much, finally, for Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who last night instituted a curfew. Oddly, after calling these protests peaceful for the last couple of days, she felt the need to institute a curfew. You don't usually have to tell people to go to bed when they're simply protesting peacefully. You get the sense from Karen Bass or those on CNN that on December 7th, 1941, they would have described Pearl Harbor as mostly peaceful. People like CNN's Brian Stelter talking about the serene scenes across 99% of Los Angeles while just a few neighborhoods burn. It's a wonderful response with a picture of Jeffrey Dahmer. 99% of the time, this man wasn't eating people. CNN, your mainstream media, your Democratic politicians, and those on the left simultaneously want to tell you that there's nothing to see here. This is not, in fact, chaos. But at the same time, they want to tell you this is a rightful protest, righteous, in fact, against a government authoritarian. Every Democrat at this point has to answer for this image. Shirtless man standing atop a burned-out Waymo, waving in front of flames and smoke the flag of Mexico. Every single politician, every single Democrat that runs for president in 2028 should be confronted with this image and asked, is this what you stand for? What do you say about the summer of 2025? Gavin Newsom says that Donald Trump sending the National Guard and Marines into Los Angeles would be an affront to the founding fathers. I ask you again, let's show that image one more time on YouTube and Facebook. Is this what the founding fathers thought of when they wrote the United States Constitution? I have trouble believing that Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Sam Adams, or George Washington thought free speech, sure. But this here is not just anti-American. This here is sedition. It's also inconvenient. It's also a political killer. Gavin Newsom's presidential hopes are dead and buried. And anyone that embraces moments like this from New York City, as a young black woman, tries to make her way to work, but like 101 in California, highways and roads shut down in New York City. Who are they confronted with? Well, of course, privileged white protesters with man buns that laugh at the idea she's trying to get to work. Watch, listen.
But I have a kid. If I know that these people are having their children taken and their parents, what about my kids? Look at this. That's what happens to my kids. I can't help you. But you can if you could just move out the way. You're not going to. How is this a peaceful protest if there's nothing to do? No, it's not.
How do you as white people feel about stopping a black woman from going to work?
Oh no, not work. I care so much.
So you don't care about stopping black people from going to work?
Look at this line that you guys are causing. I'm not causing no problems. I'm not trying to. We're just trying to leave.
These two hipsters laugh at the idea of her trying to get to work. I know that audio is a little bit hard to hear if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or radio, but you have to see the face, his face, as she explains she's trying to get to work. Oh no, not work, says undoubtedly the trust fund baby who grew up privileged, who now stands in the streets for non-citizens of America. And that's a real question, isn't it? Are they non-citizens of America? Because the left is having us believe right now, in fact, they are actually the true Americans. Or maybe they are, in fact, not standing on the soil of America. Increasingly, you're hearing first from protesters that, in fact, California and most of the American Southwest, well, it's not America. It's Mexico. Listen to this corpulent, masked rioter in California.
This is our city, and this was Mexico. You can't get this out of the land that was ours.
This is Mexico. You can't kick us out of a land that is ours. Where's that coming from? This is Mexico. It's kind of something we're starting to hear a little more throughout this protest, which is an interesting tack to say, to adopt, when you're trying to appeal to American voters about something that you think is unjust. In fact, you're not in America. You're in Mexico. Here is a Mexican senator holding up an image in Mexico, making the same argument. He's showing a map from 1830. And in 1830, it shows that much of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, California were part of Mexico. And they're making the argument that this was stolen, in fact, from Mexico. Reminds me of one of my favorite scenes. It's often all over the internet. There seems to be a lack of understanding between the difference between stolen and conquest. This was not stolen land from Mexico. This was conquest. This was a result of the Mexican-American War. In the 1840s, the Mexican military, Mexican leadership decided once again to invade Texas and take over what they thought was part of Mexico. When they lost that war, they lost not just, again, Texas, but much of the American Southwest. The truth is, the American military forces marched all the way to Mexico City. If you want to play the game of what actually belongs to whom, as the result of conquest, Well, Mexico City would be a southern capital of an American state. Mexico would be in the United States. What more? Mexico really had that part of their quote-unquote empire for about 20 years. 20 years. It was part of the Spanish Empire until the Mexican Revolution. They held that land for a good 20 years before they lost it to the United States of America. I'm not sure how that 20 years gives Mexico rightful claim to land in America. It's an odd position we're in today where people who are from America, live in America, have been here for 300 years, are referred to as colonizers, sitting on stolen land, but something that you held for 20 years and haven't had for about 200 years, oh, that's rightfully your property. It's also a failure of a message. You're losing. You're losing everywhere. And I mean everywhere. You're going to lose in politics. You're going to lose in policy. You're going to lose in protest. And you're losing, for that matter as well, Latino voters in the United States. Harry Enton at CNN's gone on, really impassioned and enthusiastic explanations about a 40-point swing. 4-0. 40-point swing among Latino voters in the United States toward Donald Trump. Not away, but toward. It's a little bit like what's going on with tariffs. We keep having pundits go on TV and tell us, it's coming, it's coming. The economic collapse, inflation, it's going to be out of control. Inflation numbers came in today. CPI up 0.1%, less than expected. And today as well, the Trump administration announces a trade deal with China. U.S. tariffs on China will remain at 55%. Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods will be at 10%. Trump says he's going to welcome in, as part of this deal, Chinese students at American colleges and universities. That's something that we should think about deeply, talk about. Yesterday on the 4 p.m. Fox News channel, Will Cain Show, we pointed out 42,000% increase in illegal immigrants from China into Mexico. In 2019, 33 Chinese nationals were detained illegally entering Mexico. That number was 14,000 by 2023. What's going on there? Organized crime, precursors, fentanyl, economic refugees, people fleeing from what they understand is not as strong as picture painted in the economy in China. But with Joe Biden's open border policies for 5 years, are you to believe that all those 42,000% increase in illegal immigrants from China stayed in Mexico? But the point is, being told hyperbolically and hyperventilating month after month, week after week, the economy's going to collapse because of tariffs. Economic data comes in once again suggesting that's not the case. And after months and years after years of saying Latino Americans want illegal immigration, you see a 40-point swing towards Donald Trump by simply doing something as common sense as enforcing the law. Enforcing the law. It's really pretty simple. This doesn't get complicated. If you're in a country illegally, you are breaking the law. This was broken down, I thought, awesomely by a guy on TikTok. I don't know who he is, but he just broke it down simply. Common sense. Watch this.
I'm from LA. I was born in LA. That's where my roots are. That's where I started my career.
Bro, you came here illegally, so you're getting sent back. Like, I'm not really understanding where I'm supposed to feel bad. Like, it's the law. Like, what? Am I missing something? Like, we also can't do that. We can't go to other countries illegally and just pop up and start working and all of that without things in order, without abiding by their laws. And to be honest, it's a much worse punishment if we end up doing that. I feel like America is being generous. Y'all are getting caught and then being sent by a plane or sent by a bus back home. That's pretty generous if you ask me. Like, if I go to Russia and try to pull that off, I might not come home.
That's Cartier family on TikTok. He's exactly right. It's pretty generous, in fact, how ICE is handling someone breaking the law and deportations. It's all common sense, and the truth is the arguments now made against it are Gavin Newsom has accused Donald Trump of being un-American. Well, I think it's pretty un-American to deny that America is part of America. That's what we're hearing, not just from protesters on the street, but as you started to hear there, also on CNN.
I'm from LA. I was born in LA. That's where my roots are. That's where I started my career. It is almost 50% Hispanic. Remember that California was part of Mexico. All of the Southwest is Mexico. So the roots are really deep in that region. And what they're saying is, no, not in our community. Because when they're coming in, even though there's second, third, fourth, fifth generation Latinos that live there, Mexican Americans that live there, some of them might be their family members. The people that they're going after, it's personal for them because they're going after their cousin and their uncle and their parents. And how does that make us safe?
That is a former Univision anchor on CNN explaining that the Southwest is Mexico. By the way, you've also heard this, an argument made by Katy Perry. So you can rely on these also amazing arguments. You can buy into them. You can get the appeal to empathy, but you, in the end, have to understand common sense and a little bit of logic. It is simply the law that's being enforced. And the arguments now against it are not simply riotous, but to borrow a phrase from Gavin Newsom, they are at this point un-American. Speaking of America, why can't we win when it comes to soccer? Plus, Matt Taibbi coming up. You don't want to miss that as we talk about Terry Moran fired from ABC. Much, much more coming up on the Will Cain Show. Hey, Willisha, here's a question. Do you know ball? I always love that phrase. Do you know ball? I hate that phrase, actually. It undercuts anything anybody has to say about sports. Do you know ball? That being said, if you do know ball, we're down to the finals here. Pacers, Thunder for the NBA title. And this is your last shot to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards with Prize Picks, the best place to play daily fantasy. Here's how it works. Very easy. You just pick more or less on player stats like points, rebounds, or assists, and that's it. Right now, here's our focus. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton. 2 days, I'm going to give you mine, you give me yours. Prize Picks has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander more than 30 points. They have Tyrese Halliburton more than 9 assists. More or less, 2 days?
I'm going more. I like both of them. Have to.
I'm going less on both of them.
All right.
Both. You're going more on both.
Dogfight.
I'm going less on both.
Okay.
I think Lou Dort is locking up Tyrese Halliburton. Maybe that means he doesn't score and he gets some assists, but Tyrese Halliburton can't deal with this Thunder defense. And I don't think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to go more than 30 because I think the offense is too diversified. And they haven't needed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to be Michael Jordan. But at home, pick yours. Pick your players. You can pick 2. You got a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. And even if your lineup isn't perfect, you can still walk away a winner. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can double your money even if one pick misses. That's how I've kept the action going all postseason long. Don't forget, Prize Picks is always adding new projections and special promotions. So check out the app throughout the week for fresh value plays and player combos. Seriously, it's so easy. Never been easier to jump in. No confusing odds or jargon. Works in over 30 states, including Texas. Download the app today and use code Will Cain, that's my name, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code WILLCAIN. You get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Carli, Lloyd, Alexi, Lalas, Matt Taibbi. Don't go anywhere. Coming up on the Will Cain Show. The last tune-up before the World Cup kicks off this weekend for the United States men's national team. It is the Gold Cup, and this is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com. On the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe, we hope you will, at our YouTube page over on YouTube and at Spotify or on Apple. 2 Hall of Famers, 2 Fox Sports soccer analysts. We've got Alexi, Lalas, and Carli Lloyd with us here on the Will Cain Show. What's up? Carli, I've never met you. Nice to meet you. Good to see you, Alexi.
Good to see you. You never met Carli?
Yeah, good to meet you.
Oh, my goodness.
No,
I was wondering where you're
Carli.
at. I guess Texas, right? I hear.
I am. I'm based out of Texas, gladly. Very gladly.
Dude's got the best gig in the world. Are you kidding me? My goodness.
I did. I hit the bank shot. I managed to do all of this from Texas. Looking very Trumpian today, Alexi. That's what somebody says to me every time I wear a blue suit with a red tie. I don't know why he he's monopolized the look. It seems like a pretty like normal look, but everybody says you're looking Trumpian if you wear it.
Well, I take that as an incredible compliment. So bring it. Okay. I mean, probably the best suit color combination ever, right? I mean, let's be honest.
They try to get them into
when I was a kid,
other colors.
No. This is it.
You give a lot of pushback.
Yeah, I'm a simple man.
It's patriotic. It's patriotic. When I was a kid, Carli, they said yellow was a power color. I don't know if they still do, but Carli is beautiful in a yellow
Thank you.
Outfit here today. What's wrong, guys? You're probably worn out. I know. Alexi, I've seen you on X. And everybody, it's anybody that cares. And we all three of us hope more and more people care. But why? 4-0 to Switzerland?
Yeah. Not good, Will. So look, we're a year out from the World Cup, and I do think that there is momentum relative to what is going to be the biggest World Cup in the world. What is going to be, I think, not just the biggest sporting event in the world, but has the potential to be the biggest event in the world. Having said that, from an actual U.S. perspective on the field right now, I mean, we just got through an era of at best spinning and certainly at worst gaslighting. And I'm not here to do that to you or your viewers or your listeners. It's not good right now when it comes to the U.S. Men's national team. It can be better, and it has to be better come next summer, because not only is a World Cup an opportunity, but I think it's a responsibility. And the young men that are going to represent what I feel is the greatest country in the world, they have a responsibility starting this summer in the Gold Cup, as you mentioned, and then obviously over the next year to ignite or reignite a belief and a passion in this team. Because right now, it's not only the criticism that they're getting and the pessimism and some of the cynicism I see out there, but it's an apathy. And maybe that's the most dangerous part right now. Because like a year to go, we should be flying right now. We should be so excited about the potential for this team come next summer relative to the men's team. I'm sitting next to what I feel is the greatest women's player, certainly in the modern day. And she won on a consistent basis. And obviously we want that for the men's team. Little apples and oranges when you compare the histories. But at some point, we have to make that progress. And when a game like last night shows up, especially for people that don't necessarily follow this team or this sport a whole lot, that is a alert flag right now, especially a year before the World Cup.
Okay. I want to back into the Gold Cup. And we'll do this with how can this get right? You're right, Alexi. Like cynicism and apathy are the biggest concerns out there right now. So, Carli, as Alexi mentioned, you've won. You've played on national teams for many, many, many years. Here's what I'm curious about. So, not playing in the Gold Cup and not there last night. Christian Pulisic, Balogun, Anthony Robinson, Yunus Musa, Sergino Dest, Weston McKennie, Tim Weah, Gio Reyna. Okay, if they're not our best players, they're at least whatever. What is that? What I just named? 7 guys, 7 who are probably in the top 10 of our best players. What I'm curious about, I don't want to crush those guys. That's not, they all have their reasons and their club commitments. And even though Ronaldo just won at the age of 40, the Nations League and all that. But what I'm curious about is training. Like, I know that a national team is not like a club team. You don't have all that training time together. So if we want to live up to Alexi's and all of ours expectations, how and when, even if they do well in the Gold Cup, these guys I just named will be on the World Cup squad. So when do they all get together and start becoming a team?
Yeah, I mean, fair points. And look, I go back to when I first got on the national team in 2005. There was no club. There was no league. We had a WPS league that started in 2009. That was for 3 years. Then that folded. Then the NWSL didn't come around until 2013. So we, as a national team, we were together a lot. We had a lot of training, a lot of preparation, a lot of funding, a lot of support from U.S. Soccer. We had all of those things, which gave us a head start against so many other countries. But now I'm going to take it to Emma Hayes, who recently was hired for the U.S. Women's National Team. She actually didn't start coaching until, what was it? She had 2 games, maybe 4 games before the Olympics. She was finishing out her job at Chelsea coaching. And she came together in just a very short time, got the team rallied, all as one, feeling good, energized, on the same page, and they came in and won an Olympics. So it can be done. I mean, I don't want to sit
Can be
here and
done.
say Pochettino, hasn't had a lot of time and all these players haven't been in. They have to be in. They have to take every ounce of opportunity they have together because there isn't that much time. There's a year out, but there's not many times that they have together, and that's the most important thing.
But literally, for both of you, because I'm ignorant, how much time will they have together? Like, come what, August?
Yeah.
Maybe even before. They'll all return to their clubs. They'll have to play with their clubs. Like, how many times will they get together to train at this point?
Yeah, there's only a handful
before the World Cup.
Yeah, only a handful of windows before the World Cup. You're talking about 8-9 games that are going to be friendly games because obviously the U.S. has already qualified hosting the World Cup. They didn't actually have to qualify hosting the World Cup. And I think that's where, some of the concern, and I'll say it, I think some of the disappointment is in someone like Christian Pulisic and that decision this summer. Look, I have been around long enough that I can certainly give somebody grace, but you got to read the room, man. And at this point, when this team is, like we said, facing incredible criticism, and you are, at least the way what we believe, not only a leader, but I think when all is said and done, has the potential to go down for the best male American soccer player in history. You need to be there, and I try so hard not to grumpy old man this thing. I don't want that, but I cannot fathom, I cannot relate whatsoever to when your country calls upon you, you not answering that call. And as far as being tired, Carli and I were talking about this in the ride over. Last time I was 100%, I was 10 years old. You are never going to be 100%. Having said all that, Christian Pulisic is going to get his rest, as are others, but now the onus is on them, okay? You've got your rest. You got what you wanted. I may not agree with it, but there's nothing I can do about it. So if and when you come back, you better bring it for this national team. And as Carli said, and as we just mentioned, very few windows of opportunity for them to do that before this World Cup. We are barreling down the track. Even though it's a year, it's going to come like that.
And he's had pressure to perform, which he has performed. But now taking this break, the amount of pressure that is going to be on him, not just the team, but on Christian to come back and flying. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot to have on your shoulders coming into a home World Cup. So it should be interesting.
Last time we were together, Alexi, I think it was one of my favorite conversations, honestly, that I've had that kind of combines the world of sports and culture. And you made the argument that the problem, one of the problems for American soccer, men's soccer, is the lack of a cohesive culture. And you made the argument for like regionalizing our national team, where guys played the same style, had some level of chemistry with each other. You made the argument 300 million people almost works against us and our geographic diversity, the size of the country. It almost works against us in bringing us together. I thought it was fascinating. I don't know if you're right, but I think it was fascinating. What do you think about Pochettino, though? Bringing us together under a cohesive vision of what it is American soccer. What is he, 0-4? He's a gigantic name for anybody listening. He's huge in the world of club soccer. Yeah. Is this his first time as a national team coach? I think
that's part of the. I could call it a problem, and certainly with the results of late, you can definitely look at it as a problem. They're paying him, rumored $6 million a year. So they're paying him a ridiculous amount of money. It's not ridiculous if he does well in the World Cup, and really he is ultimately going to be judged in the World Cup. But it's his first international gig, and an international coaching job is very, very different because we talked about. You have very, very limited time to get across what you want to do. And when I see this team right now, it looks completely rudderless. Now, is it because the players can't do what he wants, or he's not imparting that information in a quick and efficient way in order to get them to do that? I ultimately don't know. But we've talked about this before. The Supreme Court tried to define obscenity, right? And they said, well, I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it. The U.S. soccer fan knows it when they see it on the field, and they are not seeing it. I can't tell you the amount of people right now that have come up to me and said, I would take a less talented team for one that goes out there and works hard, and the spirit and the grit and all the things that you are talking about. That is attractive to the American soccer public. As diverse as we are when we think about the game, when we see it on the field, because we all are realistic in what this team is and what this team isn't, but when we see it on the field, it moves us. and we have not been moved yet by this team.
I'll ask you both, Carli, what is our style? Like, what is our identity? And so if Pochettino comes in, and he's got his, but it's got to fit who we are and the players that we have. And for anybody listening that's not as well-versed, I mean, every country, at least historically, has sort of who they are. I mean, the English are very physical. The Spanish are very technical and tiki-taka and possession. The Germans are very tactical. You know, who are we? Like, what if you take all our collection of players together and you say this is what defines these guys and what they do well? What is that?
That's $1 million question. I honestly, as an analyst, I don't know because, you know, you do look at the history of the team. You look at the history of the team when Alexi and all of those guys played in, you know, 94 World Cup and, you know, bruisers, tough, gritty, played with that pride, that passion. You know, I haven't seen that. And I think everybody's running out of patience with this team. You know, we fire Berhalter, we bring in Pochettino, we pay him more, and then everybody's just waiting to see the change that's going to happen. I don't really know. I mean, we continue to struggle in goal. You know, the number 9 position, we've been talking about that for how long? I mean, how is there no striker or deadly attacking player like a Dempsey, a Donovan, even a McBride? How have we not found somebody that can bang in goals, you know, whether it's tap-ins or whether, you know, you're running through a brick wall to get the ball in the back of the net. It's really difficult. And a club team is different. You can buy and sell players and you can kind of mold players and mold a style and a system to how you want it to be. On a national team, you've got to play, you know, you've got a pool of players that you're picking from. You can't just come in here and say, I want to play this style. You've got to play within the players that you have available.
What you have.
And I really don't know. I don't know what the style is. I don't know what I don't know what any of it is.
Okay, one more, I guess, more specific question about the team. So from my vantage point, as you just brought it up, Carli, like, up top, forwards and strikers, wingers and striker seems to be honestly where we're weakest, right? I mean, pretty good in the midfield, I would think. Pretty good. Defense, I mean, Anthony Robinson at this point is one of the best guys in the Premier League. That, you know, so it's scoring goals. It's guys up top.
Yeah, right now, as Carli mentioned, I think there's a question in goal. I think there's a question at center back, and I do think that there's a continued question up top. But these are questions that Pochettino is being paid to answer. And to Carli's point, and to your point for that matter, I mean, this melting pot fallacy, and I'll be the first to raise my hand, I bought into it. And I'm talking about it from a sporting perspective, but it probably relates to culture out there. I mean, you just did a segment before. If people aren't pulling in the same direction, it is a problem. And so the idea, whatever that idea is that Pochettino needs to impart on this team, it has to be bought in by all. I'm not saying anything new when it comes to sport. It's not the best players, it's the best collection of players. And those players have to have a shared collective understanding and, more importantly, an acceptance of how they want to play, what they want to do. And to Carli's point, but that has to be relative to what their abilities are. And I think too often right now, they're pulling in different directions. They're going in different directions, maybe a lot like our country right now. At some point, you have to say, this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. And either you're on board or you're not.
Okay, one more question before we talk about the Gold Cup. So, Alexi knows this, Carli. Like, I love soccer. And this is coming from a place where I used to make fun of soccer because I was cliched.
Kids will do that to you. Kids will do that to you.
Kids will do that to you. And that's what happened. And so I'm around youth soccer a lot. And you know, I have exposure to pretty high levels. I see academy level players a lot. I see ECNL level players a lot. And then I also see when we have these international tournaments, like the Dallas Cup. I was at the Dallas Cup. It's the biggest, you know, youth club tournament in America, I think. They say in the world, who knows. But it gets guys from all over, meaning clubs. From Mexico, from Europe, they all come over. You know what? The American clubs do pretty well. They do. They don't get railroaded by Manchester United when it comes over and their youth academy. So my point is, I'm just having trouble buying the idea that we don't produce good youth soccer players. Like, we do. But we've been saying it, to be fair now, we've been saying it for a while. And at some point, that whole feeder system should have been creating a good men's national team.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that, you can look at both the men and women's side. I think that the aspect of playing pickup and going out and playing on your own in a non-structured session doesn't happen very often. So you lose a lot of the creativity. You lose a lot of players that want to try things. Maybe they necessarily can't because they're in a structured environment where their coach is watching 24/7. And if they were to try a back heel and it fails, then they'll get in trouble or whatnot. But I think that's lacking a little bit. But I also think that there's scouts and people out there that are looking for the wrong things. I think that there's not a lot of people that can maybe see potential. The potential of players, if you find somebody that's super creative, you know what? Do they need to just be pushed to get a little fitter, maybe change their mentality a little bit? Like those are things and aspects that you can coach. The creativeness and things that players can do on the ball, that's often hard to come by. So I think that a lot of people are probably getting overlooked. But I think that the population that we have, there are loads of great soccer players out there. And, we're often just too stat driven. It doesn't have to be super complex. Stat driven and winning driven. And all the rest of the countries, they are not stressing winning at a young age.
That's what I mean, too. Yeah, at a young age. Like, did we win this league in this game? It doesn't matter in the end. Okay, let's talk about the Gold Cup. It kicks off this weekend. I was looking at this. I didn't realize only 3 countries had ever won the Gold Cup. The Gold Cup is North America, Central America, the Caribbean. Yep. And only 3 countries have ever won it: Mexico, U.S., and Canada. And Canada's only won it once. So it's basically been traded between Mexico and the United States. I would hate to say, well, is it going to be the same this year? Not based upon what we just saw from the U.S. team. But what does it look like this year going into the Gold Cup?
Yeah, so just to elaborate a little bit on it, the World Cup obviously next year is the entire world. This is the championship for our region, like you mentioned, and we traditionally have done very well and won it. But we have done very well and won it playing against teams that we are better than for the most part, or at least on our level. And if in order to win the World Cup, we have to measure ourselves against better competition. So because of these last 2 results, losing to Turkey and losing to Switzerland, which are not elite teams, but they are on our level, and certainly they've proven that they are probably better than us at this moment, you have to go into this Gold Cup thinking, and I think fairly so, that they have to rise up and do something, not that hasn't been done before, but something that is going to turn the tide a little bit. But even if they do that, to your point, we just say, yeah, it's something that we've done before. And so there will be a looking past of the Gold Cup. Having said that, we are going to take lessons out of this Gold Cup. Players are going to come to the fore that I think will have something to say over this next year. I think the team is going to look different come next summer, and I think a lot of it could be attributed to what has happened in this summer, the good and the bad.
Who? By the way, I'm really proud of you for saying Turkey. That was impressive, and not something that I can adopt. And there's another country when I was watching soccer, and there's another couple countries that have done this recently.
Yeah,
Czechia, yeah, I can't do it.
I know.
I can't do it.
Everybody loves a rebrand, and Turkey was like, I put that into Google, and I get the animal, and that's not good for our country. And so, out of respect, that's what they want us to call them. So, that's what we're doing. Yeah, Turkey. Yeah. Oh well.
It is fun to look at who's next. So you said there will be guys on this roster at the Gold Cup, and I'll start with you, Carli. That I know little about these guys, like Quinn Sullivan. I read about him. Some of these I do like learning about the young guys. I keep up with Kevin Sullivan. He's not on this roster. The young kid. I like it when we produce somebody big. But who is the exciting young guy that we should be paying attention to in the Gold Cup?
Gold Cup, I'm going to have to throw that to my friend Alexi because I'm actually covering women's Euros this summer. So,
all right.
Yeah, Ajiman up top, I think people are looking to, but we're still kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel in that these players are very young, they are very raw, they're inexperienced. Yesterday we saw Sebastian Berhalter, who is actually the son of the aforementioned Greg Berhalter, who got fired and was replaced. So that's an interesting dynamic that you have there. The Aronson brothers we saw on the field, and while we've seen some of these players, it's also some of these players are pretty young, and so hopefully you see them growing. But there's not a huge field. There's not a huge depth. So you hope collectively this team comes together in this moment, and obviously individual moments will happen within that.
All right, Gold Cup kicks off this weekend.
Yeah.
Carli, when does the Women's Euros kick off? When is that, later this summer?
So I believe kickoff is July. Is there overlap? Is it July 2nd?
Yeah, there's an overlap with the Gold Cup. So look, as we've said before, men's, women's, co-ed, naked, it doesn't matter. If people are kicking a ball, we are going to broadcast it. And Will, I know you're a businessman. Co-ed, naked, I think we can make some money, my friend. I think we can make some money.
You may see me at the tail end of Gold Cup. We'll see that. But yeah,
Okay,
I've been
good.
doing
We
all
wanna
my
see you,
research on Women's Euros, so let's see if Spain can, lift another trophy.
Yeah, everything
They're
that
the
Spain
team to beat.
touches.
All right.
Everything that Spain touches right now turns to gold for them. Men's, women's, it doesn't matter. And so we got a big summer of soccer, obviously this summer, and then we will steer it towards next summer. And have a little bit of faith, all right? Not blind faith, but have a little bit of faith going forward that not just the Americans, but the American spirit will rise up within this group. We'll see something special this summer, and that leads to even more special things next summer.
And it will be on Fox starting this weekend.
You know it.
All right, Alexi, Lalas, Carli, Lloyd. Great to meet you, Carli. Great to see you again, Alexi. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
All right. Matt Taibbi coming up. We wanted to ask him about Terry Moran out at ABC. Plus, let's ask him about Elon versus Trump. Matt has his own history with Elon Musk. See what he has to say coming up next on The Will Cain Show. Matt Taibbi is an award-winning reporter at Racket.News, and I'm excited now to have him on The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Matt, good to see you again, man.
Good to see you, Will. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I think I want to ask you to start, if you would, about Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the falling out. And the reason I want to ask you, I don't know what you have to say, but you have your own history and personal relationship, at least at times, with Elon. So did you see this coming? Are you surprised?
Not at all surprised, no. I think anybody who's had dealings with Elon understands he's an extremely volatile personality, unpredictable, and there is a moment where, and I know a number of people who've been through this, where you wake up one morning and suddenly you're dead to him, and that's kind of just the way it goes. Obviously, you can't just simply write the president of the United States out of your world as easily as you can a journalist or a subordinate or something like that. But, he has a pattern with this kind of thing.
You know, I've been around other big personalities who have some element of what you just described, but it's more like they're into you and then they're not into you, and they've lost interest and their interest has moved on to something else. But you described that as also volatile. So like, is it anger driven, or like, and I know that you have your own situation and maybe you see it through that lens, but you've seen several people, you said. Is with Elon, is it more impulsiveness and he got mad?
Yeah, I can't say that I've plumbed the depths of Elon Musk, and no, I can only speculate. I did think about this a little bit. From his point of view, I'm sure it gets tiring being constantly circled by people who want something from you, usually money, right? And there's a level of paranoia that I'm sure creeps in. But I think the thing that was unique about Elon is that even when things were okay with him, he would fluctuate in and out of different kinds of moods constantly. Like he was oscillating. Even when you were talking to him in the space of an hour, he would go from totally engaged to absent to back again. So I don't know. I think there's something up there. He was perfectly decent to me until he wasn't. So, who knows what that is. What
do you mean by you think there's something up there?
It just seemed like occasionally that a normal person, you can kind of see where the bends in the road might be personality wise, things to avoid, things that might not go over so well with that person. With Elon, he was so constantly in and out of different phases of being, and it was so unpredictable that it was very tough to know how to deal with him at times. I tried to be just straight with him and present the pros and cons of doing certain things with the Twitter files, for instance. And sometimes he was cool with it, and some other times he would have very strong opinions, and who knows? Maybe that's just the way very busy people are. But it was different in my experience than other people like in his position.
And he's different. He's
Mm-hmm.
different. That's obvious on its face. He's just a different dude. And I'm just asking these questions, not for gossip, but just I'm genuinely, personally curious. One thing that's interesting about Trump that I think he has revealed pretty obviously over time is he doesn't hold a grudge. Like, he gets over things. And there's a whole host of people around him who have either said something bad about him, including the vice president of the United States, that he doesn't seem to ruminate or care about over the long term. On that note, I mean, Elon did say some pretty outlandish things about Trump. So this would be a big ask. It'd be one of the biggest asks of Trump. But I wouldn't put it beyond the pale for Donald Trump. But I don't know about Elon. I don't know. Is he a guy that holds a grudge?
He definitely is. I mean, there are examples, I think, of people who've come back into the trust tree after being booted out. But I know some people who've been out in the wilderness for a lot longer than me, and for relatively small reasons too, and never got back in. And that's okay. People are like that. I understand that sometimes once you're done with the person, you don't want to revisit it. But it is a quirk of character, and you're right about Trump. For Trump, this is another thing I think the media gets wrong about him. A lot of his Sturm and Drang, when he goes after people in the media or tosses insults or makes fun of somebody or says inappropriate things, it's very often for effect, I think. And really there's a political calculation. And as soon as he sees that it's the better calculation is to be back in that person's good graces, he goes back to them, which can be even be disappointing to his fans, like, for instance, with Nikki Haley, right? But he's very different in that respect.
Yeah. I just saw a clip of Megyn Kelly. I think she was on the Sean Ryan show, and she was saying that when she and Trump made up, sort of, on the way out, this is Megyn Kelly's testimony, that Trump said, Megyn, it's better if we don't make up. It's better if they're talking about us. So to your point of, like, it's often for effect, like, I don't know how much he truly feels angry versus, this is good. And then when it's not good and it's good the other way, I'll go that way.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to that. Clearly he does take some things very personally and deeply. I think you can see in the decisions that he's made about which figures to go after with his executive orders and to investigate, the people who went after him with Russiagate, the prosecutors, all that stuff. I don't think he's kidding about being angry with those folks. But a lot of these interpersonal sort of internet-based feuds, I feel like he's trolling or clowning half the time. Remember, this is a person with a background in pro wrestling, and he is very good at the heel act. That's his specialty, is doing the Scott Hall walkout where he comes into the stadium, doing the crotch chop and making fun of people, and the crowd hollers and hoots and is against him, and then he turns, the wrestler turns them into to his favor. That's Trump's political specialty, and it's always an act in wrestling. Now, how much of it is an act in politics, I don't know. And certainly a lot of immigrants or migrants right now probably don't feel like it's much of an act, but other people probably should.
Well, he's got to feel like the game is coming easy to him at this point because, he's being played the heel on issues that he's happy to play the heel on. So you brought up the deportations, right? Well, the way this is playing out on the streets of Los Angeles with people, waving the Mexican flag, or the way the media then turns this story and plays this story, they've given him another, 80-20 proposition that he gets to be, for much of the population, 80% of the good guy, but for the media and the few, he's once again 20% the heel. And it's just got to feel like the easiest calculation ever for him at this point. Like,
totally.
Happily, he'll let CNN play him the heel.
Totally. And I've probably bored you with this story before, but this is very reminiscent to me of 2016 when I was covering him on the trail and he first started going after the press. I sort of watched that process happen. Like he would take little shots like a comedian. He would introduce into his act an insult here or there against the journalists who are always at the center of the stage. And he noticed that it went over well almost everywhere he went. So he started piling it on more and more and more. And before you know it, they're the enemy of the state. And he's getting ripped in the media for taking on the media. And the media doesn't realize that it's massively more unpopular than Donald Trump. And so they keep piling on. And it's a huge free commercial for Donald Trump. It's the same thing with this thing. Now, I don't know if it's quite as stark, but you've seen the polls. Trump's position on immigration used to be, a real political suckhole for him. Like he was in the -20 range, approval-wise. Now he's +1 on immigration. And that's a huge shift. It's not terribly common. And it's because I think the press has played this wrong.
It's interesting that it was whatever it was before, -20 to your point. I mean, I know you watch European politics to some extent, and people have pointed this out, whether or not you're talking about, Hungary or any host of countries, the tie that binds England, any of the populist right movements are really driven by mass migration. There are economic effects that you could argue are offshoots or cyclical spins off of the effects of mass migration, not wholly, but at least in part. But people point out, I think, is it Denmark, where a leftist government has been elected, but because they took the position of opposed to illegal and mass migration. And that is a very popular position, and we're seeing it play out here in America. I'm even surprised that at one point it would have been -20.
Yeah, so that's probably, his original negativity. I think things like the travel ban, it's not terribly in the American tradition to have any kind of closed borders. We're a nation of immigrants, so we tend to be more forgiving, I think, about that. In Europe, though, you're absolutely right. Not only is there significant resentment about mass migration, there's also resentment about the failure of governments to listen to the public about their feelings about this issue. So Brexit, for instance, just this idea that you can declare illegitimate the feelings of an entire population or a majority vote. And this has come up more than once with European votes in recent years, with the disqualification of the Le Pen in France, the Romanian elections. There's the German elections, et cetera, et cetera. That sort of doubles the anger about this whole thing. And I think the analog in the United States it starts with NAFTA, when we exported the manufacturing economy to China, and we committed ourselves to this more global version of economics. And sort of the upper class in this country to working class people, well, you got to learn the code. You got to, we'll train you. It'll be fine. And it wasn't, right? And those people are still pissed, and they have a right to be, I think. And their concerns are being ignored.
That was one of the first conversations I ever had with you, Matt. I remember a lot of our conversations, but the first times we haven't probably done that many times together on TV, but it was at CNN. And I'm going to go, what year was Occupy Wall Street? 2011?
11,
2012?
something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 11,
Yeah,
I think it was.
and I don't think learn to code had become a thing yet at that point, but Occupy Wall Street, for all of its, in my estimation, flaws or its ideological underpinnings, was about also a class of people, or at least purported to represent a class of people who've been left behind by modern economic evolution, right? And I remember making the argument. To you, well, you have to reinvent yourself, right? Like, meaning the buggy whip maker back in whatever it was, 1890 something, had to find a new profession when the car came along, right? There was no more market for buggy whips. And it's easy intellectually to go learn to code, whatever the equivalent was in 1890. But it's pretty ignorant of the actual effect on people's lives and what they have to do. And I look back at myself, but I don't have the answer. I just know that I wasn't as attuned as I should have been to the effects on people that I care about and where I came from. When you, and by the way, this is only going to speed up with AI and technology. We were talking about maybe 15% of the workforce. We're soon going to be talking about 50% of the workforce. Totally. And we better figure out how to answer this question. We better figure out how to answer this question better than whatever the modern equivalent is of learn to code. Because, by the way, coders are going to be done away with by AI as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the pattern, though, that's consistent is you have a group of professional class people who are numerically never in a position to win an election, who make sweeping decisions for the rest of the population and often sort of unilaterally decide not to listen to what the rest of the country is saying. So another great example is lockdowns. If you are a laptop class worker, right, it didn't bother you so much to have no place to send your kids during the day. But if you're a bus driver or a plumber or, have any kind of professional job, or own a restaurant, any of those things, the lockdowns were life and death, right? It was a huge thing. And I saw this at school board meetings. There was this casualness with which the press and politicians said, yeah, just deal with it. It's necessary. And they ignored these very, very legitimate concerns that people had about, well, how are we going to do this? Economically, it's impossible. And there are just so many episodes like that. And that's the zone where Trump lives. He lives in that area of discontent where upper class people are not listening to the rest of the population.
And would you agree with me? I actually think he's trying to do something about it. It's beyond my economic capacity, my knowledge to know if it's really going to work. What I mean is tariffs are clearly an attempt to try to bring, not making shoes back to America, but create a manufacturing industrial base at home that provides some source of employment and purpose. And I mean, tariffs are one example. I think he seems to be trying to figure out the future of the American economy that doesn't leave behind, and because it's politically unstable. I don't know that Trump even is calculating that, but I just think what we're touching on here, what's happening in Europe, what's happening here, and mass migration is part of that because it only increases the pool of the number of people who will be disaffected as we continue to innovate ourselves out of jobs. And I don't know what that looks like politically, but it's dangerous. I mean, every historical precedent is dangerous when you do that. And I don't know that we'll ever have seen it on this scale. This will be a massive scale. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think there's going to have to be some kind of political solution because an organic economic solution, I have trouble seeing how that's going to work out.
What would that be, though? Just like build on that political solution. Like, what do you mean? Like a UBI? Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, as you say, it's very hard to figure, but UBI, that's an attempt by people who are looking forward and seeing what the future is going to look at, to think up an answer to an inevitable problem, right? Now, it might not be the right answer.
I don't think it's the right answer, but I get it. Right.
Right.
I think giving somebody money is rarely just the answer. You got to give them a job. You got to give them a purpose, a reason to wake up.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, and that's another thing, by the way, that I think the sort of chattering classes miss about what's happened in the last 20 or 30 years in America. You know, work is not just something that you need to pay bills. It's also ennobling. It's spiritually healing. Like, for a lot of people, not being able to work hard is devastating, like to their personalities, to their ability to feel proud of themselves and feel like they're contributing to their families. Just getting money or just being given some kind of temporary holdover is not going to get it done, right? You have to give them a role, something to do, and or not give them, but let them in, right? And that's what's not happened. And you know, this tariff thing, whether it's well conceived or not, what people see is, well, here's somebody who's trying to address something that I definitely think is wrong, which is that a politically unfree society that uses essentially slave labor sucked up our jobs with the help of Wall Street, who financed the movement of the factory down the street in my town to, you know, to Shanghai or Guangdong or whatever, right? I'm pissed about that. I want to make it so that those goods that come in from China are no longer quite so cheap. And, you know, maybe that's not going to save the economy, but it will certainly make that person feel better, right? So I understand the politics of that. Now, there was just an announcement by GM that they're going to invest $4 billion in restoring a factory in the States, which is fascinating. I don't know whether that's a trend of things to come or it's just a political gesture. But, you know, it would be nice. There's also a national security issue here. Like, you can't have a country that doesn't make enough stuff to survive if things go wrong. And I saw this in Russia, too. That was a major issue for Russians in the 90s, that suddenly they weren't in charge of themselves anymore. And it should be for us, too.
Wait, tell me about that. Russia in the 90s, they weren't in charge of themselves anymore.
So there was this moment in 1996, there was a former general named Alexander Lebed, who was sort of the equivalent of Norman Schwarzkopf in Russia. And he ran for president. He was not just a military man, but he had been in charge of the Security Council under Yeltsin. And he said, we don't even make butter in Russia anymore. We have to import butter from Australia. There are so many common consumer goods that Russia no longer makes that it's an unsafe situation for us. We are too dependent on the rest of the world for things that we should be able to make ourselves. And I think he was right about that. He was a forerunner to kind of nationalist politicians who saw the problem with that. And incidentally, when we cut Russia off after their invasion of Ukraine, the prediction was that their economy would collapse. It didn't. It went the other way. And so you wonder whether there's a lesson in that for us.
It went the other way because they had to onshore more manufacturing. They had, for that reason, they built up their own internal economy.
Yeah, their own internal mechanisms. They didn't have to rely on the international banking systems anymore, right? There were lots of things that the Russians had moved toward more economic independence significantly by the mid-2000s, but since the war, they've had to even more. Now, you can still feel angry with them about the invasion, and I understand that, but it's just the fact that countries that have to import things it's an unstable, unsafe situation.
Let's go back to the media playing the heel or allowing Donald Trump to play the heel when he wants. So Terry Moran has been fired from ABC. So here's my feeling on this, Matt. So Moran tweets late Saturday night, midnight, I think, all this big rant about Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, and says they're full of bile and not brains and full of hatred and live off their hatred, whatever. I did see somebody say, if a Fox News host said this, it would be nothing. And you know what I thought? You're right. If I said that stuff about Gavin Newsom, and I may later today, then it would be nothing. But the difference is I'm not striking a pose as someone who doesn't have an opinion. And Miller did tweet about this. He said, like, I don't know that I care that Terry Moran has been fired. By the way, now he was suspended. Now they're saying he's out. Miller had tweeted, like, the real revelation here is that Moran is only one of many in this entire industry who feel the way he feels. They just put on a mask and strike a posture and a pose of a quote-unquote objective journalist. And that, to me, is what matters, not his feelings. I don't care. Let him feel that way about Miller or Trump. But it's his history, the previous, I don't know how many years, of pretending that he didn't. That's what matters.
Yeah, so I'm maybe a little more sympathetic, not to Terry Moran specifically, but there were a lot of journalists who would have preferred to keep their political thoughts to themselves. And there was an era in journalism, you know, like my father's era or 1990s or even the early 2000s, when the byline that you read in the New York Times, it didn't mean anything to you. You didn't know what that person thought about anything, right? That person wasn't a celebrity. And then there was this moment when we were all encouraged to start tweeting, and we had to become personalities in addition to reporters. And it got so extreme that when the New York Times public editor Liz Spade wrote a column about this, saying that it was unfortunate, right? Like that the anonymity of a byline is kind of important for reporters. She got fired, right? She got pushed out of that position. And so it became, you know, sort of implicit in your job that you had to be out there with your takes all the time, even the reporters. Now, I don't think that that it's smart to be out there saying things that are clearly almost disqualifyingly biased if you're a news reporter. But there is that factor is still in there, right? Like, would this guy even be tweeting in a different era? I don't know.
But is that good or bad, Matt? So listen, I hear you. Certainly when I grew up reading newspapers, I didn't know who those people were. I read right past the byline. Didn't care. But did X encourage them to be somebody different or expose who they already were? And so how much bias was I internalizing through that anonymity that I didn't know at the time, right? Now, I think I remember your dad. I remember watching your dad. And so I can't speak to him or anyone in particular. But what I can say is I think there are people who manage the concept of objectivity well. But I actually think they're fewer and far between. I think they're the exception. I don't think they were the rule. And so my suspicion is what I was getting was bias, was baked in stuff, but it wasn't exposed. And X showed exactly what was a more unfiltered version of what was baked in before. To me, the way I would rather do it, and it sounds like I'm now kissing up to you, but I'm not, is do it the way you do it. You have opinions. That's clear, okay? And people can read it. But you're also doing your best to give someone the reporting and the facts and the truth as you see it. And I think that allows the viewer an honest relationship to read it through that lens.
Well, thank you. And I agree with you. Obviously, when I went into journalism, my model for how to do this job was exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, rather than try to pretend that you don't have a take, just tell people what it is. Be a human being. Be believably a human being and real. And, somebody like Hunter Thompson or Tom Wolfe or Terry Southern or whoever it is, they were very out front with their opinions. And then they told you a story and whatever you thought their biases were more on display as you tried to interpret what they were saying. Now, at the same time, though, not everybody can be Hunter Thompson, right? Like you need to have a newspaper that just gives you, time, place, and date and what happened, and that's a different job. Somebody has to do that kind of work, and I think the sort of aspiration to objectivity was really useful to keep around. And there were, as you say, there were a lot of reporters, I think, who managed that question well. Almost all reporters. Let's be real about this. Almost everybody voted Democrat, and was left leaning in their political persuasions. Going back as long as I can remember, right? And, at least maybe until the 50s or 40s beforehand, because there was a big class change in the business after that. But in the immediate decades, almost everybody was on the blue side, but I think they hit it fairly well. Not always, but most of the time, and they were capable of getting excited about a story that did harm to some politician that they liked. I think that's the big test, right? Will you do a story about somebody who's on your side? The classic example is Bob Woodward, who's a Republican, right, and goes after Nixon, but there are plenty of others. But you're right, that kind of personality exists less and less.
Wait, what happened in the 40s and 50s, do you think, that created that class shift in the industry? You know, everybody's blue after the 40s or 50s, and I don't know what it was prior. I wouldn't say everybody was red. You know,
no,
certainly
weren't red.
Back then, you wouldn't want to say red, by the way, but Republican.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a class thing. So up until the late 60s, early 70s, journalism was like more of a trade than a profession. You didn't really need to go to journalism school. A lot of people who were in the business never went to college. Going back to the roots of the business, most of the people who were in journalism, they came from families that ran printing presses. If you go back to way back to the 1800s, but after that, it was you were much more likely to be the son or daughter of a plumber or an electrician or whatever than you were to be a college-educated person. And it wasn't considered a very reputable profession either. There's a famous joke by Walter Winchell. He said, "Yeah, I'm in journalism, but don't tell my mother. She still thinks I'm a piano player in a whorehouse," right? Like that was what people said way back when. But after All the President's Men, and some other film adaptations, journalism became kind of a sexy upper class profession. And then that was when you start to see this exodus of people like me into the business who, came from upper middle class backgrounds. And that was when it suddenly became, everybody was a Democrat and everybody was of a certain persuasion.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about the economic evolution of it, the geographic effects and the ideological effects of the school and all that, but not the economic push. Last thing, and I don't know. So what's the future? What's the future of this? Is it everybody that is it me? Am I the future? Are you in a different vein? Like everybody has an opinion. You hope that everybody's honest with you about it. Do you get back to anybody that has a real dedication to, no, I'm not going to share my opinions. That's not part of this. Whatever you say existed in we'll call it the 80s maybe, or 90s. I don't know when. Or is the future, by the way, that it goes back to being like a trade, to your point, like AI again and all that is going to make this information such a commodity. Really the only role might be analysis and opinion, to look at what is objective information and tell you what it means.
Oh, that's an interesting point, because you could easily automate a lot of the other stuff. The rest of it could just be presentation and analysis, which would be interesting. I hope it's not that way. I think the thing that we're having trouble figuring out going forward is, how do we pay for real sort of investigative journalism, which has always been kind of needed, but is very hard to pay for, and tends not to make money. I don't know that any of the things that are exciting about independent media right now lend themselves to the idea of in-depth, sort of very well-researched coverage. Like, I just don't know where that's going to come from in the future. But everything else, I think it's kind of an exciting time for media. There's so much experimentation, new formats, and that's what we're good at in America, is finding new ways to do this stuff. And so I'm optimistic something will emerge.
I like optimistic, Matt Taibbi. Okay, man, it's good to see you again. You're always
you
welcome on any of the programs here. Yeah, thank you for the time, Matt Taibbi.
All right, thanks.
Check him out
Take
at
care.
Racket. You bet, man. Make sure you check it out at Racket.News. You can pay for that investigative journalism and good analysis, by the way, by subscribing to Matt's Substack, Racket.News. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Hope you'll also subscribe to The Will Cain Show on Spotify or Apple, and we will see you same time, same place next time.